Hello, my name's Tim. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I've had a haircut. Now that I'm more streamlined, I'm going to be doing 24 rapid fire bookish questions. I saw Bask in the Story, a YouTube channel that I've just discovered, doing this, and I thought it was pretty cool, so I'm just going to do it. I've got the questions here, so I'll be reading them from there. Question number one, ebook or physical? I prefer physical books. I like the smell. I like holding them. I like being able to stack them next to my bed. Um, I would say 90% of the books I read probably are physical books. Ebooks are great on holiday because just this big. Um, but I prefer a physical book, and there's also a physical book can't run out of battery. Number two, paperback or hardback? I prefer paperback books, if I'm honest. They're smaller, they're generally lighter, they're easier to use, and they take up less space. Uh, yeah, so most of my books, also they're a lot cheaper, so most of my books are paperbacks. Two, online. Question number three, online or in-store shopping? So, uh, in-store shopping, definitely. I love looking in a bookshop. Most of the time, I go into a bookshop, I don't buy anything. I just like being in there and wandering around and seeing what takes your fancy. I think there's so much choice in bookshops, it can be quite disorientating. But for online, you have no idea what you're getting. You can't see the quality, physical quality of the book. You also can't just get a gauge on the story or how it fits. You just get a tagline. Uh, Question number four, trilogies or series? I prefer trilogies. I think generally series that I've read, a lot of them have gone on for too long, or there's at least one or two books that's a dud. While a trilogy, you have the three-act structure, and it kind of mirrors the three-act structure in the three books, and yeah, I think that's a good length for a story. Um, Question number five, heroes or villains? So, I like a good hero. I like the protagonist. I like in stories. I also like in stories a good villain. I think what I crave most in a story is tension, and attention doesn't necessarily have to come from a villain. I like it. I prefer it when the heroes are more developed, and if that means the villain's slightly less developed, I'm not too upset by that. I'd rather the hero be the villain be underdeveloped than the hero be underdeveloped. Um, One kind of book story, one kind of story that I really like, that I would love to write one day, is a rivalry. So for me, Hamilton and Burr from the show Hamilton and from history is one of my favourite hero villain relationship, because neither of them are really heroes or villains. They're just trying to make their way in the world, and they just have completely different ways of doing it. And I really enjoy that. That's why I really want to watch Amadeus at some point. I'd like to see, because you've got Amadeus and Salieri, who again real rivals. Super interested in that. So where am I? Question number six: a book you want everyone to read. Ooh, tough one. So I'm gonna say, uh, ooh, a book that I think everyone should read is Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. I think it's funny. I think it's poignant. I think it's hilarious. I think it's depressing. I think it's nonsensical, and it shows how adults can be incredibly stupid and war is scary. Um, I think you enjoy reading it, and then it sticks with you for quite a long time. Um, but I think it's funnier than people say. Oh, it's really funny, but it's about the horrors of war. It is, but it's through a really funny lens. So, Catch 22 by Joseph Heller. Question number seven: recommend an underrated book. Okay, this is a young adult series that was released. I don't even know when it was released. It's called Mortal Engines, um, by Philip Reeve. So the first book is called Mortal Engines. Here we go. This is a challenge. The second book is called Predator's Gold. The third book is called Infernal Machines. And the fourth book is called A Darkling Plane, I want to say. But it's a series of 4 books set in a futuristic world post-nuclear war where all of the cities have mobilized, and you have London is just this giant motorized city that drives around and eats other cities. It's called municipal Darwinism. The world is really interesting, but for me, it's got characters who are 2 main characters who are opposites but similar. The world grows with every book in a good way. There's really interesting characters and themes, and for me, the plot goes to places. The writer really takes risks, and I really appreciate that. And I felt really emotionally invested. And as a Brit, it's mainly the first book's definitely set in London, and it's written by a Brit. And there's a few nods and things that I quite enjoyed. Question number 8. The last book you finished. This morning, I finished Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Ooh, and of all the books I've read, it is certainly one of them. Brief summary, I think the first 400 pages is probably the worst book I've ever read, and the last 100 pages are really, really good. So, question number 9, the last book you bought. So on my birthday, a couple of months ago, went to South Kensington Bookshop, which is just by the museums, and there I found their version of Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, which is a book I know about. I know it's about a guy who's blind, and there's killer plants, and that's about it. And I bought it for like £3.50, so I'm very excited to read it. It's a really nice edition. Question number 10, weirdest thing you've used as a bookmark. I use lots of weird things as a bookmark. I've got a cloth bookmark at the moment that my wife made me that I did lose for a long time, but I found it again. I've used train tickets. I often used to use boarding passes on planes. Very good bookmark. Usually because I take a book on a plane, and I'd buy a book in an airport and use the boarding pass for my flight as the bookmark for the book I was reading it on the plane. Receipts, other things, yeah. Question number 11, I've run out of fingers. Used books, yes or no? Yes, 100%. The majority of books that I get probably are from charity shops. Question number 12, top 3 favourite genres. Fantasy, I would say. Comedy books. Quite like books with a comedy twist, comedy side to them. And then action adventure books. Yeah, action adventure books. Those are probably my 3 favourite genres. Question number 13, borrow or buy? I do go to the library fairly regularly, not as much as I'd like, but I've got loads of books I need to read, and I'm happy to borrow books from friends. So I definitely borrow. I generally don't buy that many books. I borrow them or I get gifted them. I very rarely actually buy books. Compared to, you see some booktubers and they're like, oh, I bought 20 books this month, and I'm like, nah, I buy 5 books a year for myself. Certainly full price. Question number 14, characters or plot? You can't... A good book has both. You can have an amazing plot, but if you don't care about the characters, you don't care about what's happening. The thing that I really like is tension and stakes and characters and plot are usually a source of both of those things. You can have like, oh my god, the world is going to explode, but if you don't get the vibe from the characters, you don't get those stakes are really high. Or you can have just a bunch of people just walking around and nothing's happening, which is a kind of book that I really struggle to read. So I would probably say plot. Plot's what I think about. Plot is how I describe what happens. So, in a book. Question number 15. Long or short books? I prefer shorter books. Lots of books are too long. The book I read, just Fourth Wing, that's like, did not need to be 500 pages long. I think you see, generally as authors get more and more successful, their books get longer and longer, which is actually a detriment. I'm a fan of a short book. Do what you want to say, get it done. Question 16, long or short chapters? Definitely short chapters. For me, I read before going to bed, usually, or I read on my lunch break. So short chapters have that, I'll just read one more, I'll just read one more. While long chapters, so let's say a chapter is 5 pages long, and I generally read 30 to 50 pages. So let's say I read 10 chapters, I read 50 pages, and I'm like, I'll just read one more, I'll just read one more. There's a big, I'll just read one more, and then I've read 60, 70 pages. Well, if a chapter is 30 pages, I'm not going to read another one of those. I actually look and I'm like, skip, and I'm like, that's 25 pages, I ain't going to read that. And then I've only read 30 pages, so definitely short chapters. Question number 17. Name the first 3 books you can think of. To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, and The Da Vinci Code. Don't know why I thought of those. Question 18. Books that made you laugh or cry. Books that made me laugh are the Payne and Jones series by Chris Kuznetsky. That still has one of my favourite jokes in it, where it's about these 2 like ex-marine types who are now just adventuring, finding treasure, things like that. And they're both men, and there's a woman, and one of them's trying to chat up the woman, and the woman is French. And he says like, we call this repartee. And he's like, I didn't know that was French for retard. It's one of my favourite things. You know, it obviously has a word that you shouldn't use, but it's just a great joke. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, really funny when, I can't remember which book it is, but when there's like a giant supercomputer and they leave him alone with Marvin the paranoid android, and the computer just kills itself. It's just because it just can't live with being with Marvin anymore than just a few hours. So I like books that make me laugh. Books that made me cry, I don't think I've ever cried at a book, though I have felt incredibly emotional at points. The end of reading Mortal Engines series, that got me, because I was so invested into what was going on and what was happening and everyone involved. And then the ending had a beautiful moment that of almost poetry to it, and that really got me. And then I'll always remember finishing reading To Kill a Mockingbird on the train up to London for like a team away day thing, and I was just really emotional by the end of it, because again, the ending was, you see all the pieces of the puzzle come together, because I thought for 75-80% of the book it was more like collected short stories, and I thought this is good, but I don't see why. It's like, no, it's the classic. It is very good. And then it all just comes together perfectly with Boo Radley and everything. And it took me like the whole day to kind of come down from reading that. Question number 19. Our world or living in a fictional world? Would you like to live? Or was that you like books? I'd like to live in our world, because my friends and my family and my wife and my children are in this world. In terms of reading, I prefer fictional worlds. Definitely. They're just more interesting. They're escapism. They're a way to express what could happen in the world. Definitely. I prefer reading in fictional worlds. Question number 20. Audiobooks, yes or no? Yeah, I do listen to audiobooks. I'm currently going through the Chronicles of Narnia. I haven't. I go in. I very rarely listen to audiobooks. I usually listen to other things while doing the washing up and driving. But I have enjoyed listening to audiobooks so far, so maybe I'll carry on. Question number 21. Do you judge a book by its cover? Yes. Yes. I prefer books that are really striking, big, bright colours in like a cool, abstract aesthetic. I hate how almost all book covers, especially thrillers, are just the words of the title of the book in big letters on it. I hate that. I find that really boring. Yeah, I find that terrible. So I do definitely judge a book by its cover, but I wouldn't just pick up a book and buy it without just from the cover, but it would make a big impact on me. Question number 22. Do you book to movies or book to TV adaptations? So this is, do you prefer, I think, when a book's turned into a movie or when a book's turned into a TV show? I honestly prefer books being turned into movies. Yes, you have to trim and you have to streamline, but almost the majority of TV series are just films that are stretched out, especially your 12 episodes. That's like 12 hours. That's longer than the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You know what I mean? Are you saying your one book has more in it than the Lord of the Rings trilogy? Really? So I think in a solid 2.5 hour film, you can, even like a big fantasy book, I think you could probably get into a 3-hour film. Any other usual kind of book. Like, they made The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe 2.5 hours long. And they're going to make a TV series out of that? And I'm like, that's too long. Yeah, so I prefer movies. Also, you then get more. I like it when a book is adapted and they have to change things, they have to twist things to fit the medium better. I prefer that to just shot for shot remake of the book, because what are you adding? What are you saying with it? Question 23. Movie or TV show you prefer to the book? I think generally, most of the time, if you watch the thing first, if you watch the film or TV show and then read the book, you prefer the film more, because the jump in your life, quality of your life, from going, I didn't know this thing existed, to I know this thing exists and I really enjoy it, compared to I know the film's really good, to actually the book's pretty good. It's a lot smaller jump. So most of the time, if I watch the film first, I prefer the film, or I'm like, it's good. They're both different. I'm not like, oh, I hate the film. But for me, I would say probably, I think The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride is probably the perfect film for me. And the book is still so good. And the book has a brilliant framing device, which you can't do in the film. So the film does something different. And I like that. I think the jokes just work a bit better, maybe. But I do really love that book. Really love that book. Oh, I know. Treasure Island. Because it's a great story, especially if you include Muppets. Fantastic story. Upper echelon. It's my favourite Muppet movie, Muppet Treasure Island. Tim Curry singing, being a pirate. Can't beat it. But the book, because it's just so old, the language is very old, because it's not just a classic, it's like a classic. There's so many paragraphs of just about running a ship and different kinds of rope and things like that. So for me, I love the story of Treasure Island, but every adaptation I think improves on the original, because just the original was that core element, and then being allowed to grow on it and add new things, such as Muppets. And then finally, in this rapid fire, 24 questions. Question 24: series or standalones in terms of reading? I generally read probably more standalones. or series of interconnected stories. When I do read a series, I like spreading them out a bit. Probably because for me, the big series that dominates all of culture, especially for millennials like myself, is Harry Potter. And for me, the Harry Potter series isn't just about the books, it's about the weight between the books and allowing things to soak into your subconscious. And then I do think an important part of a book, any book, is to refresh the reader. So I think if you read I generally find if you read things back to back to back to back, you first of all, just the experience is over quicker. For me, Harry Potter reading the books lasted like 10 years. I think it took her 10 years to get the 7 books out, which is still incredible. Looking at you, Patrick Rothfuss, George R. R. Martin. And someone can read, someone can go, oh, I quite like Harry Potter, and they can read all that in 6 months. And like 10 years of my life becomes 6 months of yours. And then that person is like, no, they're really good, but I don't get what all the fuss is about. And it's like, because you haven't had time to ruminate and soak, and let it soak into your brain. So I like spreading series out. Even the Mortal Engine series, where I got all 4 books. I just love those books so much. I got all 4 books. I read one every 6 months. So it took me 2 years to read them, even though it's only 4 books. And it just meant that everything had just so much more weight to it, because you just have that time with the series. So I think that was a very long answer for a question that wasn't even answering the question. Series or standalone? I think I prefer series, but I generally read them as standalones because I don't go into them too often. But I think some kinds of stories suit standalones better. Adventure stories, thrillers, things like that. So there we go. Those are my 24 rapid fire bookish questions that I'm going to do in 24 minutes. Not very rapid fire, but I think the last point is to tag some people in this. So I'll go into the comments or into the description. I don't really know how YouTube works, and tag some people I think will enjoy this tag. Anyway, I've had a haircut. I'm more streamlined. 24 rapid fire questions. Let me know in the comments below what your answers are to these, and give this video a like. Please subscribe. I think I'm on 35 subscribers, so I'm basically Mr. Beast. It's like Mr. Beast's here, and then it's me, just like that. If we could just get over Mr. Beast, that would be great. Anyway, see you later.